You had mentioned the word vigorous as part of the negotiations years ago to get into the Practice Act and have that be a part of it. That is also something that is on kind of the WATA's list of to get addressed. Why is it so important to remove? Why is that a goal? And then just tying it right into it, I'll let you guys get right into it. Is what barriers are we facing because of that? And I think some of those may be relatively obvious, but if you don't mind kind of shedding some light on it.
Well, the term in and of itself, it's one of the first lines in our Practice Act, and it basically is a descriptor that defines who we can actually treat or who we define as an athlete or what types of things and people who sustain athletic injuries we are allowed to treat. And part of the problem with that term is it kind of overshoots, if you will, a lot of the patients that I treat. And if you look at the definition of the term vigorous in the dictionary, that has kind of one connotation to it. But that term has also been used to describe levels of physical activity by a variety of healthcare related or oriented groups. So the CDC, the American College of Sports Medicine, a representative who testified for us referred to a definition that the Harvard Medical School defined, but they're all consistent and they're based on levels of energy expenditure. So whether that's metabolic equivalents or whether it's kilocalories expended, the term vigorous is kind of exactly what it says. It's people that are engaged in very vigorous activities. But there are a lot of activities that are not considered vigorous, but are still sports. So if you look at those definitions, things that would be considered less than vigorous are things like softball, doubles tennis, golf, and then a variety of different employment activities like truck driving, working in a factory assembly line, certain farming or carpentry, landscaping, those types of things. So it essentially doesn't match up with the type of patient that we treat on a daily basis. So this is a matter of kind of making things consistent, right? Because I guess
Sure.
technically you can look at some of the patients we're dealing with, and our patient schedules would be scaled way back based on just that strict definition. Now, are there ways around it on a daily basis? Yeah, you could probably just ask the person, do you ever want to get back to X, Y, or Z? And if they say yes, you document that, and then okay, we can kind of move forward. But we shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't have to creatively work around a definition within our statutes. Our definitions should match with what we can do, what we're trained to do, and who we can do it on. So it's a bit of semantics and wordplay. Part of the argument against removing that, and this argument has been consistent ever since we first approached this way back when Joe was our president and we were kind of working through our Practice Act, is that they feel that it opens up the doors for us to treat anybody. And they always give examples when they testify of an elderly person who might have dementia, several comorbidities that, the example she gave the other day was she fell and fractured her kneecap. And this goes back to kind of the conversation we had earlier is understanding our scope of practice, understanding our training. And if we encounter a patient on our schedule, and I do this frequently every, other day when I triage my schedule, if there's somebody on there that's not appropriate for me to treat, boom, we address that and we get them to where they should be going. So there has to be some trust that the healthcare providers will understand how to do that and how to appropriately handle the situations when you encounter a patient that isn't essentially, within our scope of practice or with our level of expertise. So it's a way to try to eliminate some of that confusion. It's a way to hopefully streamline the process of how we schedule our patients and how we choose who we can treat. And it's a way for us, again, to hopefully remove kind of that potential barrier where somebody could call us out against this particular patient. And we actually had a situation in one of our rehabilitation clinics where a gentleman was middle-aged, kind of my age, wasn't very active, and his wife, who was either a PT or a PT-aide, I can't remember what she was, but she basically said, well, he doesn't do anything vigorous. This guy he just kind of chills, right? So there was actually some concern whether this person who had a knee scope, I believe it was appropriate for this athletic trainer to treat. And of course it was, right? I'd feel comfortable treating somebody my age that had a knee replacement. So it's a matter of, again, not restricting who we can practice on, but as Joe has mentioned several times, making sure that we can practice within our scope and do the things that we're experts at and trained to do.
Mhm. Yeah, I think obviously this was, our definition of who we can treat, which is also pretty unique to healthcare professions, maybe entirely unique in the state of Wisconsin. Is we negotiated that initially that we would treat athletes only, and our 2010 amendment changed that to be able to allow us to treat people who participate in vigorous physical activity or who desire to return to vigorous physical activity. So we think that was a step in the right direction. We agreed to it at that time. Other professions will say that it's a safety issue and a really large expansion of our scope, and quite frankly, we just disagree with that. Is we have to work under referral of 8 different types of providers in the state in outpatient rehabilitation settings. So there is a level there that protects the public. And we also haven't had any evidence of cases where ATs are working with patients beyond our scope in front of our affiliated credentialing board. It just hasn't existed. And so I think we'll continue to fight for this as well, because it represents the people that we are trained to take care of, whether they're athletes or whether they're, any person in the population.
Right.
Fantastic.
And yeah, and as Joe said, is it a safety issue? Well, we certainly don't think so. Right. And the other aspects of our practice act, the other definitions that are there, the things we can do in our practice and our protocol essentially aren't changing. So everything else that does regulate us is essentially staying the same. So this is again, it's semantics. It's a word that probably is overly restrictive, and we feel it's just not necessary. But it can potentially impact the types of individuals that we can treat. And I think Joe's point about the referral is really, really important. And it kind of goes back to kind of some of the arguments we made about the reimbursement parity. Is it should be up to the physician and the patient and their healthcare team to provide or to decide who's best able to provide the service to that individual. And again, it goes back to patient satisfaction, patient access, delivering high quality patient care to get the outcomes that we all want. And whether that patient's appropriate for me or not, I think that's a decision that needs to be made on an individual basis. And it shouldn't be something that's decided based on an arbitrary term in our Practice Act.